Hey, it's me, Quence, coming back at you again, this time with my top 10 TV shows that aired in 2023. Specifically, I'm ranking new TV shows, first seasons, brand new shows that aired this year. So sorry, Fargo. I know technically you're an anthology show and it's all different casts and shit, but you're in season 5, so you don't make the cut. I know TV shows aren't quite as exciting as films, and I certainly didn't watch 100 of them, but I thought there were some great television programs nonetheless, on cable and streaming alike. Well, mostly streaming, and I'm gonna get into them right now. Starting off strong at the bottom of my list, it's my first, but not last, animated show from last year. My number 10 is Fired on Mars. Fired on Mars is a super original animated sci-fi comedy starring Luke Wilson as a guy who moves to Mars permanently to be a graphic designer for the mega corporation that is housed there, but then he gets fired and has to figure out what to do with himself while he's stuck on another planet. This is a really dry comedic show. The tone is something in the realm of BoJack Horseman, at least that's the closest popular example I can think of to give you an idea of the tone in terms of its ironic, sardonic humor. It has a little bit of that main character always fails syndrome that I sometimes find frustrating to watch. I feel like that is a fairly common trope in comedy shows, but I think in this one, they do give that character enough wins over the course of the series, and there are enough characters who understand where he's coming from and don't necessarily treat him like garbage that I think it balances out. This is also a show that sounds like it's going to be a fairly typical animated workplace sitcom from the premise or from just watching the first episode or two, but I assure you it is anything but that. The deeper that you get into the show, the more the plot gets revealed. I guarantee you will not be able to predict where this thing is headed just from the beginning of it. It may be a comedy, but the plot and characters are treated extremely seriously. And things get super weird and super dark by the end of it. A couple episodes in particular are really poignant and thought-provoking. There's a great voice cast also. If you like sci-fi comedy or just sci-fi in general, and you're looking for something that is different and subtler and more adult than I think most science fiction comedies you find are, you need to check this one out. Number 9 on my list blends reality and fiction a little bit. It's a show called Jury Duty. Jury Duty is an incredible concept. This is a hidden camera show in which every single person is an actor except for one guy who believes that he is a juror in a real court case, when in fact the entire thing is made up. This is a concept that has been done a few times before in different ways, but obviously there's millions of reality shows that are somewhat of a take on this concept, but here it is so funny and well executed. The show is essentially a sitcom like Parks and Recreation or anything in that wave of post-office sitcoms where they're treated and filmed like a documentary, and they have little cutaways where they'll talk to some of the characters in between scenes, except that here, one of those guys is not acting. And the show would still be really funny even if you removed that aspect from it, or even if you just weren't aware that one guy wasn't in on the joke. This isn't a mean-spirited show, it's not a prank show, and they don't really even always call attention to the fact that this guy is unaware, other than focusing more on his reactions to the absurd situations that are presented. That aspect is the gimmick of the show, but it's not everything that the show is pinned on. There also are genuinely funny sitcom plots and scenarios presented. It's just a clever comedy that happens to have this layer of reality nestled on top of it. James Marsden in particular is awesome on this show, playing himself, or kind of a more pompous version of himself. I'm always a big fan of actors who are willing to make fools of themselves like that on camera. It's a really fun one to watch, and it has exactly the kind of ending that you're hoping it's going to have. I won't give it away, but it's really satisfying. Everything comes full circle, and I love the way it turned out. We're jumping around from streaming service to streaming service here, and next up we will land on Netflix with my number 8 pick, Beef. Steven Yeun and Ali Wong head up Beef, which is another mixture of comedy and drama about two people who start feuding with each other after an over-the-top road rage incident. The show follows both characters equally. They're both kind of the main protagonists of the show, which is smart because it allows you to understand and empathize with both their points of view. There's no one person here that you're rooting for more than the other. Actually, you're probably not rooting for either of them because they're both petty, chaotic monsters in their own ways. Steven Yeun is just such a great actor, and I'm thrilled seeing him pop up in so many smart, complex projects, and that he hasn't been typecast as Guy from Walking Dead. This is a show that explores the burning, boiling rage that, let's face it, we all hold inside of us on a daily basis, threatening to go off and cause havoc if the tiniest little thing happens to set it off. You know how we can all relate to that. It's about the rage that we may sometimes take out on others, when really it's aimed inward at ourselves and the choices that we've made in our shitty lives. If that doesn't make for good comedy, I don't know what does. And this show, Beef, is also a great example, I think, of the classic Netflix binge model. Each episode ends with a hook and a catchy song over the credits. It's going to make you want to jump over to the next one right away. It's really satisfying, easy watching, with a deeper message that does not get in the way of the fun. And also worth noting that it's a show with an Asian cast that isn't about the fact that they're Asian, which is a rare thing to see in any American media. Just refreshing to see a show like this that has aspects that you don't always see in shows like this. You gotta watch Beef. My next show, I don't think I have to tell most people to watch. You probably watched it. It's from the old HBO, and it's called The Last of Us. I'm an enormous fan of both of the Last of Us video games, so I came into this well-versed in the world and prepared for what was going to happen, and it was very gratifying to see this series done justice as a proper live-action series. For the most part, the show sticks very closely to the game, with lots of scenes and dialogue that are directly lifted from the game's cutscenes, proving just how good that game was to begin with. It required very little adapting at all. That said, when the show does deviate, those are my favorite parts of the whole thing. The entire third or fourth episode that is focused on the romance with Nick Offerman's character, a character who does appear in the game, but is really a side appearance, has very little backstory, and here they blow him up into a very, very significant episode. And then there are these little tweaks to characters and situations made throughout the rest of the show that make this more than just a retread if you've already experienced the game. But if you haven't, you're going to get that whole story in a satisfying way that is very faithful to what it is. And of course, Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey kill it in those roles. I'm really excited to see how this show handles adapting The Last of Us Part 2, which I know is a polarizing game, but personally I think it's even better than the original, and it's going to be fascinating to see how mainstream, non-gaming audiences react to it, or what the showrunners decide to change, if anything, to maybe make it more palatable to viewers. My number 6 show comes from director Boots Riley, who made Sorry to Bother You, one of my favorite movies the year it came out, which is why I was so excited to watch I'm a Virgo and see exactly how he was going to handle a TV show format. This is essentially a comic book superhero show, although it's more like a critique of superhero culture and hero worship in general, as well as capitalism and several other things. It's a much weirder, different sort of take on superheroes than you've seen before. You almost, when you start watching it, don't even realize that this is supposed to be a world of super-powered people. It sort of dawns on you as you go, at least it did for me. It's about a young kid who is 13 feet tall, and he's been hidden away from the world all his life until now, and now he is struggling with how to navigate the world as a 13-foot tall person. I said Boots Riley was a filmmaker, and part of me actually wishes that this was a movie instead of a miniseries. I think it maybe could have used some tightening up, even though it is only 7 episodes long. But when it gets good, it gets really good, particularly in the last couple of episodes, which have some incredible sequences that I wish everyone in the country would sit down and watch. This show is super weird. It dives head on into absurdity with, like I said, giant people who move super fast, cartoons that can make you lose your mind if you watch them. It's ostensibly set in the real world, but there's a very heightened, outlandish approach to everything. Very interesting mix of tones with really, really goofy stuff on top of very, very serious stuff, just like Sorry to Bother You had. Definitely one of the most original things you can find on television. Plus, it has a kick-ass soundtrack, and Walton Goggins, who I'll always love no matter what he's in. It may be a little rough around the edges, but I love the places that it's willing to go, and I am fine with the fact that it's willing to get a little messy to get there. And I think Boots Riley is one of the most important voices that we have making anything out there. Can't wait to see what he does next, and I'm a Virgo. Definitely worthy of his reputation. Another property that I have a lot of fondness for was adapted for my number 5 favorite show. It's Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Scott Pilgrim was a comic book, then a movie, then a video game, and now an anime. And yes, this is technically an anime. It was animated and produced by the studio Science Saru, so everyone can mark this down as probably the only time I will ever list an anime as one of my favorite series of the year. We'll see, who knows. The original Scott Pilgrim is a story about a Canadian kid who needs to defeat his new girlfriend's 7 evil exes in order to date her. If you haven't seen any Scott Pilgrim media before, you're just gonna have to watch it to really understand what the hell that means or what the hell I'm talking about. I'm not going to give away much about this new series, except to say that it is an adaptation of the comics, as well as the movie, which, they're both pretty similar, while also being entirely its own thing, to the point where I know some fans were very disappointed with the direction that takes off. For me, it was even better than what I had hoped for. I was thrilled to see what they did with it. The entire cast from the live-action movie returns to voice their same roles here, which is awesome because, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Unlike the movie, this is a pretty quiet show. It's still got the things you come to expect, the bombastic fight scenes, rock and roll performances, but it has kind of a different vibe to it, I would say. Maybe a bit closer to the comics in the sense that there's more slice of life scenes of characters hanging out in Toronto, just talking to each other. Maybe it's just the way the audio is mixed on the show. It's got a chill vibe to it that I dug. As I said, it goes to some very different places from the source material, and I would strongly recommend, if you haven't, reading the comics or watching the movie before watching the show. You'll get a lot more out of it that way. I loved how this fleshed out some of the characters, the side characters from the original stuff that didn't quite get as much time for you to spend with them in other versions of it. I think it adds color to every other version of Scott Pilgrim, and I think all of these different versions actually feed into each other and make each other better. I'm a fan of all of them. I'm fully ready for the Scott Pilgrim Broadway musical to happen next. All right, my number 4 TV show is another example of a filmmaker that I love moving into the world of the television. It's Poker Face, which was created by Ryan Johnson. Poker Face is kind of a throwback to older Monster of the Week style shows, in which the main character, played by Natasha Lyonne, travels from town to town solving mysteries, murder mysteries. Pretty much everywhere she goes, people are dying. It's real unfortunate. But her superpower is that she can tell when someone is lying just by looking at them say it. She knows whether or not they're telling the truth, which, as you might expect, is pretty helpful in solving mysteries. And you might also think that that's somewhat a limiting power in terms of the stories that it allows you to tell, but the writers find plenty of ways to mine storylines from it. Actually, it's not usually the main focus of any given episode. It's just her little quirk that happens to give her an edge, sort of like, Monk has OCD, Sherlock Holmes is a prick, and she can tell if people are lying. Anyway, the show itself has some really compelling mysteries that look like they have great production values to them. Most of these episodes feel like they could work perfectly well as a full-length standalone movie. The writing and the characters are that good. Each one introduces you to characters that you start caring about right away, and the ones that are going to get murdered you usually feel real bad about because they cast very likable, great actors in those roles, and they give you enough backstory that you're immediately sympathetic towards them. And by the end of the episode, things are more or less fully resolved, so you're ready to move right on to the next adventure. And I don't always love that style of show, but when it's done well and it's written well, that can be great. It helps that Natasha Lyonne is really charismatic and charming and funny, and I can't think of another actress who could carry this show the way that she does. The Rian Johnson directed episodes are probably the standouts of the whole thing, but almost all of them are great watches, and the ones that are less than great are still really good. I ain't lying to you. You gotta catch Poker Face. And now back to another animated series, my third on this list, with my number 3 pick, Scavenger's Reign. This is another sci-fi series about the crew of a ship that's crash landed on a mysterious alien planet. Emphasis on the word alien, because at this point we've all seen 100 different visions of aliens in other worlds in movies and TV and books and what have you, which is why it's always so impressive to me when a piece of work is able to present something that feels truly unlike anything I've seen before in the realm of science fiction. Of course, this was based on a film or a short film, I believe, that I have not watched. I probably should check it out because of how much I loved this show. But the show itself is made up of characters trying to survive on an extremely hostile world, where seemingly every organism that exists is trying to kill them in some way. But it's the way in which they behave that makes this such a fascinating viewing experience. It's almost like watching a nature documentary for a place that doesn't really exist. Every life form feels like it's fully fleshed out, and even when you can't possibly comprehend exactly what they're thinking or feeling because it's, again, so very alien, you get the sense that it makes perfect sense in the context of this being in this place. I have to imagine that the creators of Scavenger's Reign have copious amounts of detailed notes and drawings detailing the biology of all these creatures. They just feel so fully formed and believable. You witness their strange life cycles and the way that they consume other creatures and how they survive and how they reproduce. Of course, a lot of it is inspired by the weirdness of real-world animals that we have here on Earth, but exaggerated and taken to very strange, mysterious new levels. Oh yeah, and the animation bringing those things to life is tremendous. Really good-looking show. A lot of it is sparse in terms of dialogue, so most of your enjoyment, I think, is gonna come from the visuals, but as it progresses, you do learn more about the characters involved, and you'll find that there is a pretty compelling human drama there as well. You absolutely cannot miss Scavenger's Reign if you have ever been into any kind of science fiction. Or maybe if you just love nature. Okay, next up is my number 2 TV show of the year, and it is Swarm. Swarm is the newest show created by Donald Glover, his follow-up to Atlanta, another show I loved. And it feels like not nearly as many people are talking about Swarm as they should be, probably because it aired on Amazon Prime, and I don't know, sometimes Amazon Prime just doesn't market their shows and people don't know they exist. Anyway, this one is about a girl who is obsessed with Nyjah, a fictional pop star, basically a stand-in for Beyonce, kind of a little bit Taylor Swift. Insert your mega pop star idol of choice here, they all work. That's the kickoff for the character, but what happens to her and what she does as a result of it and the journey that she goes on is very different from that simple setup, and I'm not going to give it away because I think it's an incredible reveal in the first episode. If you're familiar with Atlanta, I think you'll find similar filmmaking ideas at play here, but because there are only 7 episodes, it's tight, it moves, says what it has to say, and gets out without any fat on it. I really wasn't sure what to expect with this one from the premise. I thought it would just be a critique of obsessive fan culture, and that is absolutely what it is. That's the jumping off point, and it sort of weaves in and out of the narrative. But there's a lot more to it than that. Dominique Fishback plays the main character, and my God, she is so fascinating to watch. She plays the character like this strange little alien who doesn't quite understand other humans, and it's such a joy to see her funny little looks and reactions to things throughout the show. Similar to I'm a Virgo, this is one that plays around with reality a lot. It's heightened, it's weird. There are aspects that you're not always sure if you're supposed to know if they're really happening or not. But underneath all of that is, I think, a really important and timely message for today. It's a dark, suspenseful thriller. It's sublimely weird, and it's just more proof that Donald Glover is kind of a genius. Now, here at last, we come to my number one favorite new TV show that aired in 2023, and it is The Curse. The Curse is a collaboration between Benny Safdie, who has done films like Uncut Gems, and Nathan Fielder, who's done shows like Nathan For You and The Rehearsal, some of my favorite things, those things I just mentioned. It also stars Emma Stone, who is just killing it this year between this and Poor Things, two completely different kinds of performances, but both so excellent. She ought to get an Emmy and an Oscar this year, I tell you. Anyway, The Curse is about a married couple who are working on a reality show about their ecologically friendly homes and their efforts to build them and promote them in this small town in New Mexico. Why it is called The Curse, I will let you discover for yourself as you watch it, but it's another fascinating aspect of the show, another layer of supernatural strangeness on top of a more realistic setting, which is maybe kind of a running theme this year. In terms of the substance of the show, it's primarily a takedown of seemingly well-meaning white people who want to make the world a better place, but only on the condition that it makes them look good too, and the conflict between their positive ideas and their stubborn ignorance when it comes to actually interacting with anyone outside of their bubble. The kind of people who maybe don't even realize that they're ignorant. They're so self-deluded that they think they're doing the right thing, that they can't see what's right in front of their faces of how stupid they're acting. This is the first example I think I've seen of Nathan Fielder acting in a long-form scripted television series. And his style of acting and his persona that he's created for himself is perfect for this role. He's kind of doing his usual shtick that he does, this strange, awkward guy who's desperate for people to like him. But I think he shows more range than that on here, and he holds his own against Emma Stone, which is certainly impressive. Many scenarios on this show actually feel to me like they could have come out of Nathan For You, which was a pseudo-documentary comedy show, which you might think means that those scenarios wouldn't be as funny here, since they're meant to involve the reactions of real people to his ridiculous things that he does and says. But the writing and the directing is so good, it feels completely believable, as if you were watching real people, and it's also still hilarious. It's one of those shows that will make you cringe, make you feel bad for pretty much every character involved, but it's just so deeply funny, and it's shot in this naturalistic way, this very serious way with these slow, dramatic zooms on characters and places, almost like a horror movie at times, that makes it even funnier with how uncomfortable you feel. Now, this show actually hasn't finished its season 1 yet at the time I'm recording this video. There is still the finale to go, which is technically airing in 2024, but the majority of its episodes aired in 2023, so unless they somehow really fail to stick the landing, which I doubt, I feel confident in saying that this one is my favorite from 2023. It's made by some of my favorite creators in recent years, so it was sort of a layup for me. It's very much in tune with my sense of humor, and again, I think it is speaking to something that is very relevant to today. They really managed to create some captivating, engrossing television with The Curse. That's it, it's done. I don't have any special awards or honorable mentions for TV because I don't have time to watch as many TV shows as I do movies. You know, they have multiple episodes, they're long, it's a real commitment. But now I can finally go and watch some new or even old movies and TV shows because I'm not trying to cram to make these lists of mine. Let me know in the comments what you think. What were your favorite shows of the year? Was there something that I missed? A show that you think I should have watched or that I didn't mention? Maybe I did watch it, but I didn't like it. I don't know. You're going to have to let me know in the comments what you think. And of course, you can check out my favorite movies from last year as well, which is up in a previous video. And hopefully I'll be kicking out more videos this year, but no promises because I'm pretty lazy. Check out more of my stuff if it ever occurs at jonathanestis.com, such as my weekly podcasts that I do, which are a lot of fun and are on different subjects. There's always fun stuff going on there. Oh yeah, like and subscribe. Isn't that what people say? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Thank you so much for watching. Go enjoy a television. Stop watching the goddamn YouTube. There's scripted entertainment out there you could be checking out, like these shows I just mentioned here. I'm Quence. Thank you, and have a good one.